She spent New Year's Eve alone for the third year in a row. Until the Vampire King knocked on her door at midnight. The man standing in her hallway had eyes that shouldn't exist, and he said her name like he'd been searching for her his entire life. She didn't know it yet, but opening that door would unravel every truth she'd ever believed about safety loneliness and what it truly means to be alone in the dark. Nadia Volkov curled on her worn-out sofa in Brooklyn, watching snow fall past her third-floor window on December 31st. 28 years old, messy hair tied in a high bun, flannel pajamas already wrinkled from hours of sitting. In her hands, a mug of lukewarm hot chocolate had gone cold. She didn't bother reheating it. Outside, the city prepared to explode with fireworks and champagne. Inside apartment 3B, Nadia prepared to welcome the same way she'd welcomed the last 3 New Years, in silence. Alone. The tiny artificial Christmas tree blinked in the corner, its ornaments telling a story she didn't want to remember. A felt reindeer. A glass snowflake. A cheap plastic star she'd bought herself because emptiness apparently needed decoration. 5 years since the accident. 5 years since her brother moved an ocean away. 3 years since her last boyfriend walked out unable to carry grief that wasn't even his. She'd built walls, strong ones, the kind that kept pain out. But walls, she would soon discover, also keep certain things in. And some visitors don't need an invitation to cross them. Nadia had turned off her phone 2 hours ago. She couldn't watch one more Instagram story of glittering parties, midnight kisses, families laughing around tables that groaned with food and warmth. Her phone lay face down on the coffee table, a small act of self-preservation. She scrolled TikTok instead, landing on a video titled, "How to Survive New Year's Alone." A young woman her age, similar apartment, similar pajamas, similar tree. Nadia watched the whole thing, then whispered to the empty room, "Maybe this year will be different." The words tasted like lies. Loneliness had become her armor. As long as she stayed inside these 4 walls, no one could hurt her. No one could leave. No one could die in a sudden, senseless moment and rip her world apart again. Safety tasted like cold, hot chocolate and blue screen glow. It tasted like nothing at all. For the first time in years, she let herself feel the weight of it, not just loneliness, but the suffocating smallness of a life built to avoid pain. She wasn't living, she was existing, and somewhere deep down, she knew it, but she didn't know how to stop. She didn't know that in 13 minutes, the choice would be made for her. If loneliness has ever felt like safety, like this video, and follow along, because what knocks at midnight will shatter everything. 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes until midnight. Then 3 sharp knocks echoed through the apartment. Knock, knock, knock. Nadia froze. Her breath caught in her throat. She lived alone. She hadn't ordered food. Her neighbors knew better. Who knocks on a stranger's door 13 minutes before midnight on New Year's Eve? Knock. 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 Louder. More deliberate. Like whoever stood on the other side knew she was listening. Heart hammering, Nadia crept to the door and pressed her eye to the peephole. Through the fisheye lens, she saw him. Tall. Expensive black coat dusted with snow. Standing perfectly still under the hallway's fluorescent light like he had all the time in the world. His skin was too pale. Unnaturally so. And his eyes? Even through the warped glass of the peephole, she could see they were wrong. Deep red. Not brown, not hazel. Red like garnets pulled from the earth. Like blood under moonlight. He tilted his head slowly as if he knew exactly where she stood, as if he could see her through the door. When he spoke, his voice carried an Italian accent that seemed to vibrate through the wood, through the walls, through her chest. Nadia Volkov. Her name. He knew her name. "I need to speak with you about Mrs. Calabrese. It's urgent." Mrs. Calabrese, her elderly neighbor. The warm-hearted woman who always asked if Nadia was eating enough, dating anyone living enough. But how did this stranger know her name? How did he know about Mrs. Calabrese? And why did his eyes glow like that? Something in his voice pulled at her. Something ancient, certain, magnetic. Something that whispered danger and promise in equal measure. Her fingers moved toward the deadbolt. She would wonder later if some part of her had known. If opening this door meant opening everything else she'd locked away for 5 years. If loneliness, for all its pain, was at least predictable. His red eyes held hers through the peephole. Unblinking. Patient. "Please," he said softly. "I promise you she's safe, but you—" He paused. "You might not be." Every instinct screamed danger, and yet her hand was already turning the lock. The clock struck midnight. Fireworks exploded over Brooklyn, welcoming 2026. Nadia opened the door. The man standing in her hallway was even more striking, up close, broad shoulders, a scar on his left cheek, black hair streaked with silver. He smelled like cedarwood and something else. Something metallic and dark. He looked at her with those impossible red eyes, and for the first time in 3 years, Nadia felt seen. "My name is Donato Testa," he said quietly. "The vampire king of Brooklyn." And then he said something that should have sent her running. Something that should have made her slam the door and call the police. But instead, it made her step aside and let him in. Because sometimes, the most frightening choice is the only one that makes you feel alive. Nadia stepped back, letting the vampire king cross her threshold. The moment Donato Testa entered, the air shifted. Colder, heavier. He didn't move like other people. Too smooth, too deliberate. "You're wondering why I'm here," he said, closing the door with a quiet click that sounded too final. Nadia crossed her arms over her flannel pajamas. "You said it's about Mrs. Calabrese?" "She's safe. She called me tonight worried about you. Said you've been alone too long." Heat crept up Nadia's neck. She had no right. "There's someone hunting in Brooklyn." Donato's tone shifted, dangerous. "Someone who targets people who live alone, who have no one to notice if they disappear." The words hit like ice water. "Are you threatening me?" "No, I'm protecting you. There's a man, Victor Clav. He's hunting for me, and he uses innocence to draw me out." Nadia's pulse hammered. "Then I'll call the police. They can't help you. Not with what he is. Not with what I am." The word hung unspoken between them. Vampire. Donato studied her, then smiled a sad smile, ancient and tired. "Someone who's been alone far longer than you have Nadia Volkov." Something in his voice cracked open a door inside her chest. She knew that loneliness, recognized it like a reflection. "How long?" she whispered. "Centuries." Nadia sank onto her sofa, suddenly exhausted. "You're not making any sense. I need you to trust me, just for tonight. Come with me somewhere safe until I can neutralize Clav's threat." "Why would I trust you?" "Because Mrs. Calabrese does, and because some part of you already knows I'm telling the truth." Nadia hated that he was right. Some part of her did know. "Where would we go?" "My home. In Manhattan." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." Nadia thought about her cold apartment, her silent phone. 5 years of existing instead of living. "If I say yes, I need to know one thing." "Ask." "What are you really say it?" Donato held her gaze. "I'm a vampire. I've ruled Brooklyn's darkness for over 2 centuries. and Victor Klov wants to destroy me by harming anyone I protect." The truth should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like relief. "Give me 10 minutes to pack a bag." Because thinking was what kept her locked in this apartment for 3 years. Maybe it was time to stop thinking and start living. Even if living meant following the Vampire King into the dark. The penthouse in Manhattan took Nadia's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering city. The interior was warm, despite the Gothic art, the shelves heavy with ancient books. Donato set her bag down. "You'll have your own room, privacy, anything you need." Nadia wandered to the windows. "Why are you really doing this?" Behind her, Donato was quiet. "Mrs. Calabresi described you, said you reminded her of someone who'd forgotten how to hope." He paused. "I've lived long enough to know that immortality without connection is just existence. I've been existing for centuries, alone, by choice, because attachment makes you vulnerable." He cleared his throat. "When she called, I realized I didn't want to spend another New Year alone, and neither did you." Nadia turned to face him. "So, this is what mutual loneliness? Maybe. Or maybe it's a chance for both of us to remember what it feels like to not be alone." Something shifted in Nadia's chest. "I don't know how to do this anymore," she admitted. "Trust people. Let them in. My parents died, and my brother left, and everyone I've cared about since has walked away because I'm too broken." "You're not broken." The Vampire King's voice was fierce. "You're wounded. There's a difference." Tears burned Nadia's eyes. "How would you know?" "Because I've carried wounds for centuries. Wounds don't make you less. They make you human." He paused. "Well, in your case at least." The unexpected humor startled a wet laugh from her. Donato moved closer, careful. "You don't have to trust me yet, but you're safe here. And for tonight, that's enough." "What if Klov comes here?" "He won't. This place has protections. Magic that predates this city." He gestured to symbols carved into the doorframes. "You're safer here than anywhere else in New York." They stood there in the warm glow snow, falling outside the city, celebrating below. Two lonely people who'd stumbled into each other's orbits. "I should let you rest," Donato said. "Your room is down the hall. Second door. Will you be here in the morning?" "I don't sleep much, but yes, I'll be here." Nadia started toward the hallway, then stopped. "Donato, thank you for not letting me spend New Year alone." His red eyes softened. "Thank you for opening the door." Morning came too bright through unfamiliar windows. When Nadia ventured into the main living area, Donato was at the kitchen counter preparing breakfast. He'd changed into a dark sweater and jeans. He looked almost human, until he turned and those red eyes caught the light. "You cook." "After a fashion. It's not what you're used to, but I tried." They ate in comfortable silence. "How long have you lived in New York?" Nadia asked. "On and off since the 1800s. I was born in Italy. Renaissance era." Nadia choked on her coffee. "Renaissance." "I was 33 when I changed. My father was cruel. When he died, I inherited everything, the power, the enemies. I told myself I wouldn't become him. But isolation seemed safer than attachment." He looked at her. "So I built walls. Sound familiar?" "Too familiar." "My parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. Random. Senseless." She picked at the bread. "My brother moved to Singapore 6 months later. I stayed. In the same city, same job, same apartment. I told myself I was honoring their memory. But really, I was just frozen." Donato reached across the counter, his hand stopping just short of hers. "May I?" She nodded. His fingers closed around hers, cool but solid. Real. "You're not frozen anymore," he said quietly. "You opened the door last night. That took courage." "Or stupidity." "Sometimes they're the same thing." Nadia laughed. "Is this what you do? Collect broken people?" "No. Usually I avoid people entirely. You're the first person I've invited here in decades." "Why me?" "Because when I saw you through that peephole alone on New Year's Eve wearing flannel pajamas, I saw myself. Someone who'd forgotten how to not be alone." The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open inside Nadia. She laced her fingers through his. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Completely. But I don't want to let go." Donato's red eyes met hers, and for the first time since opening the door, Nadia felt hope. Then Donato's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression hardened. "What is it?" Nadia asked. "Marco, there's been an incident." He looked at her fear in those ancient eyes. "Clov's men tried to break into your building at 3 a.m. They were looking for you." "Did they—" "Mrs. Calabresi is fine, but they left a message. For me." He showed her the phone. Her apartment door painted with something dark and red. "The king's weakness dies first." "They think I'm your weakness," Nadia said. "They're not wrong." Donato set the phone down carefully. "This changes things. Clov knows about you now. He'll keep coming." "Then I should leave." "No." The word came out desperate. "That's what he wants, to isolate you. Here with me, you're protected." "For how long? Forever. If necessary. I can't just hide here forever. I have a job, a life." "The life where you worked remotely and spent New Year alone?" Donato's voice was gentle but firm. The words stung because they were true. "I'm not trying to trap you, Nadia. I'm trying to keep you alive long enough to actually live." His red eyes held hers. "You can leave, right now. I'll arrange protection, a new identity, money. You'll be safe. Or you stay, you trust me, and we face this together." Together. The word felt foreign, dangerous. But it also felt like the first real thing anyone had offered her in 5 years. "If I stay, I need to know everything. No more half-truths." Donato nodded. "Fair. And I'm not some helpless princess. If Clov wants a war, I want to know how to fight back." Respect flickered in his eyes. "Also fair. And you have to promise me something. Anything. Don't let me become a prisoner of my own fear again. I need you to push me, to not let me hide." Donato cupped her face in his cool hands. "I promise. No more hiding, for either of us." Nadia leaned into his touch. "I must be insane." "Probably. But crashing together is better than being safe alone." She almost kissed him then. But Donato's phone buzzed again. And again. He checked the screen, his expression turning furious. "What now?" "Marco, Clov's made his move. There's been an attack on one of my territories. 3 of my people are gone." "This is because of me," Nadia said. "Because you protected me." "No, this is because Clov is a coward." Donato looked at her, and she saw the king beneath the lonely man. "He made me care about someone again. Gave me something worth fighting for." He pressed a quick kiss to her forehead. "Stay here. Marco will be here in 10 minutes. Don't open the door for anyone but him." "Where are you going?" "To end this, before Clov hurts anyone else." "You can't just—" "I can, and I will." He grabbed his coat. "I'll come back, Nadia, I promise." "How do you know?" A ghost of a smile. "Because I have something to come back to now." Then he was gone, leaving Nadia alone in the penthouse with the snow falling outside. She sank onto the sofa, hugging her knees. 48 hours ago, she'd been alone in her apartment, convinced safety was better than risk. Now she was terrified that the first person she'd let in years might not come back. Just when she thought she could trust again, the past returned. Only this time, it wasn't her past. It was his. And it wanted blood. The first hour, Nadia paced. She tried to work, opened spreadsheets that suddenly seemed meaningless. How could she analyze data when somewhere in the city, the vampire king was fighting for his life, fighting because of her? The second hour, she tried TV. Everything was too loud, too normal. People celebrating, kissing at midnight, making resolutions. She turned it off. Through the windows, Manhattan glittered under fresh snow. Beautiful, peaceful, oblivious to the war and its shadows. "I'll come back," he'd promised. But promises were fragile. She'd learned that when her parents didn't come home 5 years ago. When a random driver ran a red light and shattered her world. Promises meant nothing against death. Her phone buzzed. Alex texting from Singapore. "Happy New Year, sis. Hope you're not spending it alone this time." She typed back, "Not alone. Sort of. It's complicated." "Good. You deserve to be happy." Did she, after 5 years of choosing safety over life? She didn't respond. The third hour, Marco arrived, broad-shouldered, scarred with eyes that had seen too much. He moved through the penthouse, checking windows, reinforcing wards. "Any word?" Nadia asked. Marco's expression remained neutral. "The fight's ongoing. The Vampire King is holding his ground." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." He moved to the kitchen. "You should eat something." "I'm not hungry." "You're human. You need to eat." Nadia watched him work. "How long have you worked for him?" 10 centuries, give or take." The casual way he said it made her head spin. Long enough to see him at his worst. Long enough to see him at his best. Marco met her eyes. "This is the closest to his best I've seen in 200 years. The words settled in her chest, heavy and terrifying. What if he doesn't come back? He will. But what if he doesn't? Marco's jaw tightened. Then we make sure Clav pays for it. It wasn't comfort, but it was honest. The fourth hour brought the phone call, a number Nadia didn't recognize. Hello, silence, then a voice, old, rough, heavy with a Russian accent. Nadia Volkov. Her name in that voice felt like a violation. Who is this? My name is Victor Clav. I believe we have a mutual acquaintance. Ice flooded her veins. How did you get this number? I have many resources, just as your vampire king has his. Clav's voice carried amusement. I wanted to speak with you before things get unpleasant. I have nothing to say to you. Then listen. Donato Testa is a liar. He's using you. Whatever he's told you, they're all designed to manipulate you into being his shield. I don't believe you. Don't you ask yourself, Nadia, why did he come to your door that night, out of all the lonely people in this city, why you? The question hit too close. He said Mrs. Calabrese called him. Convenient, isn't it, that your neighbor happens to know the vampire king? Clav's voice dripped poison. Have you asked yourself what he really wants? To protect me. From you. No, dear girl. To use you as bait. A pause. Then why hasn't he told you the truth about your blood? Nadia's breath caught. What? Oh, he didn't mention that part. That your bloodline is special? That you carry vampire ancestry, dormant but detectable. That you're valuable, not for who you are, but for what you are. No, that couldn't be true. But pieces clicked into place. The way Donato had stared at her. The way he'd avoided certain questions. You're lying, she repeated, but her voice shook. Ask him when he returns. Ask him why he really came to your door, and watch how he answers. The line went dead. Nadia stood frozen, Clov's words echoing. Special bloodline. Vampire ancestry. Bait. Who was that? Marco's voice made her jump. Wrong number, Nadia lied. But Marco's expression said he didn't believe her. Nadia wandered into Donato's study. Leather chair, mahogany desk, papers stacked neatly. On the corner sat a leather journal. She knew she shouldn't, but Clov's words gnawed at her. Ask him why he really came to your door. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned. She flipped backward. Her own name stopped her cold. November 15, 2025. Marco reported unusual activity near Brooklyn. Clov's scouts watching Baltic Street. The target, Nadia Volkov, data analyst, lives alone. Initial investigation shows she carries dormant vampire bloodline, likely descended from the Volkov clan. Clov must not know yet. Mrs. Calabrese confirmed the girl is isolated, wounded, unlikely to have protection. If Clov discovers what she is, he'll either eliminate her to deny me a potential asset or turn her against me. Decision monitor from distance. Intervene only if necessary. Asset, not person. Asset. She flipped forward, hands shaking. December 31st, 2025, made the call. New Year's Eve, she'll be alone, vulnerable, possibly receptive. Mrs. Calabrese will provide the excuse. If this works, I can protect the bloodline and potentially gain an ally against Clov. Either way, the game has begun. The journal slipped from her fingers. Game. Bloodline. Asset. Not once did he write about caring, about connection, about seeing a lonely woman and wanting to help. Every word was strategy, calculation, chess moves. She'd been so stupid. The door opened. Donato stepped through coat, tourniquet healing on his cheek. Exhausted but alive. You're okay, thank God. I was worried. Why did you come to my door that night? He stopped cold, taking in her expression. The journal on the floor. Nadia, don't lie to me. I read your journal. I know about the bloodline, about you monitoring me for weeks, about me being an asset in your war with Clov. His expression crumbled. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Tell me the truth. Did you come because you cared, or because I'm useful? Silence. Both, Donato finally said, voice raw. I came because you were in danger, because Clov was circling, because your bloodline makes you valuable, but also what? Also you felt sorry for the lonely girl. No. He moved toward her, but Nadia stepped back. I came because Mrs. Calabrese was right. Because when I saw you alone on New Year's Eve trying so hard to convince yourself you were fine, I saw myself. Yes, the bloodline matters. But that's not why I stayed. Then why did you stay? Because for the first time in 200 years, I didn't want to leave. Nadia couldn't let herself believe. Clov called me. He told me everything about the bloodline, about me being bait. And you know what the worst part is? I almost didn't believe him. Donato's face went pale. You spoke to Clov. He said you were using me, and your journal proves he was right. My journal is weeks old, written before I knew you, before... He ran a hand through his hair. Yes, I came to protect an asset, but I stayed because I was falling in love with you. All Nadia could hear was asset. I need you to leave, she whispered. Nadia, please, just go. The Vampire King stood frozen, but he didn't argue. He simply nodded. I'll have Marco stay. You're still in danger whether you trust me or not. Fine. He moved to the door, paused. For what it's worth, I meant every word I said to you. Every promise. Every moment. Nadia said nothing. The door closed with a quiet click. She'd let herself hope. Let herself believe that opening her door meant opening her life to something real. But she'd been wrong. She was still just a means to an end. Valuable not for who she was, but for what she carried in her veins. Nadia sank to the floor and let herself break. After 5 years of building walls, she'd finally let someone in. And it had destroyed her anyway. Nadia didn't know how long she sat there on the floor staring at nothing. Every shadow seemed to whisper asset. Every silence echoed game. Marco had retreated, but she could feel his presence, guarding her, protecting the bloodline. Not her. Never her. Her phone buzzed. Alex again. You okay? That didn't sound like sort of good. How could she explain? She turned the phone face down. A knock. Miss Volkov. Marco's voice. There's someone here to see you. Her heart stopped. I told him to leave. It's not Donato. Then who? Mrs. Calabresi. The elderly woman sat on the bed, looking small against the expensive furniture. Her eyes studied Nadia with guilt. You're angry, Mrs. Calabresi said. Nadia stood in the doorway. You knew about Donato, about what he wanted from me, and you helped him anyway. Yes. Why? Sit with me, child. Nadia sat, leaving space between them. My husband worked for Donato's father 60 years ago. Donato's father was cruel. When he died, everyone expected Donato to be the same. But he wasn't. Mrs. Calabresi's voice softened. He tried to be better, kinder, but kindness in that world is dangerous. So he learned to be alone instead. That doesn't explain why you helped him trick me. Mrs. Calabresi pulled out a faded photograph herself and Antonio young and smiling. Antonio died 15 years ago. Heart attack. I spent the next 10 years alone. Like you. Building walls. Avoiding the world because it hurt too much. Nadia's throat tightened. 5 years ago, I decided enough was enough. I started saying yes. To life. Mrs. Calabresi looked at Nadia. It was terrifying, but it saved me. What does this have to do with... When I called Donato about you, it wasn't because he asked. I called because I saw myself in you. That same loneliness. That same fear wrapped up as safety. Her voice grew fierce. Yes, Donato needed to protect you because of your blood. But when I told him about you, something changed in his voice. Changed how? He sounded hopeful for the first time in decades. Mrs. Calabresi gripped Nadia's hand. I'm not saying what he did was right, but that man didn't stay because of strategy. He stayed because he saw someone as lonely as he was. Someone worth the risk. Nadia pulled her hand away. You don't know that. Child, I've known Donato for 60 years. I watched him become the vampire king. And in all that time, I never saw him look at anyone the way he looks at you. He lied to me. He did. And if you can't forgive that, you have every right to walk away. But before you do, ask yourself something. What? Are you angry because he lied? Or are you angry because letting him in meant risking being hurt again, and now you have an excuse to run back to being safe? The words hit like a slap. That's not fair, Nadia whispered. No, but it's true. The old woman stood, leaving the photograph. I'm not telling you to trust him. I'm telling you to be honest with yourself about why you don't. She moved to the door, then paused. The man who knocked on your door at midnight. He was terrified, but he came anyway, because you mattered more than his fear. Mrs. Calabresi's eyes held Nadia's. The question is, do you have that same courage? Nadia picked up the photograph with trembling fingers. Mrs. Calabresi and Antonio young and in love. They didn't know he would die suddenly. They were just happy. Choosing each other despite the risk. Nadia thought about her parents. How that loss had taught her that love meant pain, That connection meant inevitable abandonment. Her walls hadn't protected her from pain. They just made her lonely. When the Vampire King knocked at midnight, she'd felt something shift. A glimpse of what life could be if she was brave enough to risk it. Yes, he'd come for strategic reasons, but he'd stayed for human ones, and she'd sent him away because it was easier than being vulnerable. Easier than admitting she was terrified not of being used, but of being loved, and losing it again. In his penthouse, Donato stood at the window watching snow fall. Nothing had hurt quite like the look on Nadia's face when she'd told him to leave. "You're brooding?" Marco appeared. "It's unbecoming." "She was right to send me away." "Was she? Or was she scared?" Marco crossed his arms. "I've watched you for 10 centuries. I've never seen you make breakfast for anyone. I've never seen you write their name like it was something precious. I've never seen you willing to start a war to keep someone safe. The bloodline is an excuse. You fell in love with her the moment she opened that door. Everything else was just you trying to convince yourself it was strategy." Donato closed his eyes. "She'll never forgive me." "Maybe not, but you could give her the choice. Tell her the truth, all of it, and let her decide. And if she chooses to walk away, then you respect it, and you spend the next century knowing you were brave enough to try." Nadia found Donato on the rooftop. He stood at the edge, snow gathering on his shoulders. He turned when he heard her. "Nadia, let me talk first, please." He nodded. "I read your journal, saw all the calculations, and I was so angry because it confirmed my worst fear that I wasn't chosen for me." Nadia's voice shook. "But then Mrs. Calabrese came, and she made me realize I was using your lie as an excuse to run back to being safe because opening up to you terrified me." "Nadia, when my parents died, I learned that love meant loss. So I built walls, but I was just existing, not living." Tears froze on her cheeks. "You came to my door for the bloodline, but you stayed because you were lonely too, because we recognized something in each other." She moved closer. "Yes, you should have told me the truth, but I'm done letting fear make my choices." Donato stared at her hope in his eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to try. Really try. No more walls, no more hiding. Even though I lied, you omitted. There's a difference." A ghost of a smile. "And the man who made me breakfast and held my hand, that was the real you. Not the Vampire King, just Donato." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I'm so sorry. I should have told you everything." "We both have things to work on, but we can do it together." "Nadia, I've lived for centuries, and I have never wanted anything more than this, than you." He cupped her face. "I love you. Not your bloodline, not your strategic value. You. The woman who opens doors at midnight, who's strong enough to call me on my failures and brave enough to forgive them." "I love you too," Nadia whispered. "Even though you're strange and old and technically not alive." He laughed and kissed her. It tasted like snow and second chances. Like two people who'd spent too long alone finally choosing to be together. When they pulled apart, Nadia rested her forehead against his. "No more secrets," she said. "No more secrets. No more hiding. For either of us." They stood there as snow fell, two broken people choosing to heal together. Choosing risk over safety. Choosing life over existence. Because crashing together was better than being safe alone. And some doors once opened changed everything. Dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the snow-covered city in gold and rose. Nadia woke in Donato's room, their room maybe, The thought still felt fragile, but she was learning not to overthink, learning to simply be. The Vampire King stood at the window, shirtless, watching the sunrise. Magic shimmered around him, protection against the light. "You're awake," he said without turning. "How did you know?" "Your heartbeat changed. I've learned the rhythm of it." He glanced back, smiling. "Fast when you're nervous, slow when you're peaceful." Nadia sat up. "And now? Now it's steady, strong, like you finally stopped running." She had stopped running. After 5 years of fleeing from connection from life, she'd finally stood still long enough to let someone catch her. "Come here," Donato said, extending his hand. She crossed to him, and he wrapped his arms around her. Together, they watched the sun climb higher. 3 days since New Year's Eve. 3 days since she'd opened the door. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now we figure it out together. One day at a time." "Clov's still out there." "He is, but he's weakened. We captured most of his people and the Vampire Council is moving against him. We have time." Time. Such a precious concept. "And my bloodline?" "We'll explore it, if you want." His arms tightened. "But there's no pressure. You get to decide what you want to know when you want to know it." The choice meant everything. They spent the morning doing impossibly normal things. Donato made breakfast. Nadia made coffee, measuring grounds with careful precision. They sat at the kitchen island, knees touching. "I called Alex last night," Nadia said. "After the rooftop, I told him I met someone. He wants to meet you." She laughed. "I'm not sure how to explain the whole vampire thing." "We'll figure it out. Maybe start with 'he's Italian' and work our way up to 'immortal.' That's one approach." Donato led her to his study. "I want you to read the rest of the journal. The parts after December 31st. The parts I wrote about you after I knew you." Nadia hesitated. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. No more secrets, remember." She picked up the journal, flipping to January 1st, 2026. She opened the door. I didn't think she would, but she did. Stood there in flannel pajamas with the most heartbreaking expression, like she wanted to trust, but had forgotten how. "God help me, I think I'm already falling." Nadia's throat tightened as she read forward. January 2nd made her breakfast. She smiled at the coffee, said it was perfect. Didn't have the heart to tell her I'd been practicing for days. Worth every failed attempt to see that smile. January 3rd. She told me about her parents today. I saw myself in her grief the way loss carves holes in you. But where I chose isolation, she's choosing courage. I don't deserve her, but I'm selfish enough to keep her anyway. Each entry revealed the truth that somewhere between strategy and protection, the Vampire King had fallen completely in love. Not with her bloodline, with her. Tears blurred the words. "I was so scared," Nadia whispered. "When I read the earlier entries, all I could see was strategy." Donato wrapped his arms around her waist. "You were never just strategy. From the moment you opened that door, skeptical and brave and so beautifully human, you became the only thing that mattered." She turned in his arms. "I'm sorry I sent you away." "Don't be. You needed space to make your choice, and you chose to come back." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "That's what matters." Later, Nadia returned to her Brooklyn apartment. Not to stay, just to pack. Donato came with her, along with Marco. They climbed the stairs past Mrs. Calabresi's door, where warm smells of cooking drifted out. Her door still had faint traces of Clov's message. Someone had tried to clean it, but the words remained as ghostly shadows. "We can have this replaced," Donato said. "It's okay." Nadia touched the doorframe. "It's just wood, just words." They couldn't hurt her anymore. Inside, everything looked exactly as she'd left it. The Christmas tree still blinked. The mug of cold, hot chocolate sat on the table. It felt like a tomb, a monument to loneliness. "This place was my prison," Nadia said. "I told myself it was safe, but really I was just hiding. From life. From everything that makes life worth living." "You're not hiding anymore." "No, I'm not." Together they packed. Clothes, books, Christmas ornaments, pieces of a life she was choosing to integrate, not abandon. Mrs. Calabresi knocked halfway through, appearing with cookies and satisfaction on her face. "So you worked it out," she said. "We did." Nadia hugged her. "Thank you for being brave enough to meddle." "That's what neighbors are for, child. I couldn't let you spend another year alone. Life's too short even for vampires." Donato laughed, and Nadia realized it was a sound she wanted to hear for the rest of her life. By evening, Nadia's belongings filled half of Donato's penthouse. It should have felt overwhelming moving in with someone she'd known less than a week. But it felt right, like pieces clicking into place. They ate dinner at the kitchen island, Marco joining them, his presence a reminder they weren't just building a relationship, but joining a family. "I spoke with the Vampire Council," Donato said over wine. "They want to meet you, officially recognize you as, well, as mine." "Yours?" Nadia raised an eyebrow. "Ours, as part of my household, my protection, Your girlfriend." Marco snorted into his drink. The Vampire King looked flustered. "I'm centuries old. Girlfriend feels insufficient. Partner, then." Nadia smiled. "I like partner." "Partner." Donato tested the word. "Yes, that works." After dinner, they stood at the windows watching city lights flicker like stars. Snow had stopped, leaving everything clean and new. "I keep thinking about that night," Nadia said. "New Year's Eve, if I hadn't opened the door." "But you did." "I almost didn't. Almost chose safety over risk." "But you didn't." The Vampire King turned her to face him. "You were brave, and that bravery changed both our lives." Nadia thought about the woman she'd been 3 days ago. Lonely, isolated, convinced that walls were the same as protection. She wasn't that woman anymore. She'd opened a door literally and metaphorically and let the world back in. Let risk back in, let love back in. And yes, it was terrifying. Yes, there would be challenges. Clove was still out there. Her bloodline was still a mystery. The Vampire Council wanted to meet her, but she wouldn't face any of it alone. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For knocking on my door at midnight, for seeing me when I'd made myself invisible, for being patient when I pushed you away, for loving me even when I couldn't love myself." Donato cupped her face. "Thank you for opening the door, for taking the risk, for choosing to live instead of just exist." He kissed her soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Nadia looked around the penthouse. 2 lives beginning to merge. The house felt different now, not like a fortress or a hiding place, like a home. And for the first time since her parents died, Nadia felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not safe, not protected, but alive. Truly, fully, beautifully alive. Spring came to New York with unexpected gentleness. Cherry blossoms bloomed in Central Park, their petals drifting past the penthouse windows. The city that had felt so cold on New Year's Eve now seemed alive with possibility. Nadia stood at the windows, holding a letter from Alex. "Coming to visit next month. Can't wait to meet this mysterious Italian boyfriend. Mom and Dad would have liked him, I think. They always said you needed someone who could make you laugh again." Tears pricked her eyes, good tears, healing tears. For the first time in 5 years, she could think about her parents without the grief crushing her. Could remember their love without drowning in loss. Good news. Donato appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Alex is coming, in April. I'll try not to accidentally reveal my true nature by bursting into flames in front of him. Nadia laughed, leaning back against his chest. That would be ideal, yes. Why? 3 months ago, this view had meant isolation. Now, it meant home. That afternoon, Nadia sat in Mrs. Calabresi's apartment helping sort through old photographs. It had become their Thursday tradition. A knock interrupted them. Mrs. Calabresi opened the door to reveal a young woman, maybe 25, with tired eyes. One of their neighbors from the building. "I'm sorry to bother you," the young woman said hesitantly. "But I heard you help people sometimes. People who are alone." Mrs. Calabresi smiled. "Come in, dear. What's your name?" "Sarah." As Sarah settled on the sofa, she began to speak. About losing her job, about her family being across the country, about spending every evening alone, afraid to reach out. Nadia listened, and in Sarah's story, she heard her own. "I know it sounds pathetic," Sarah finished, "but I'm so tired of being alone." "It's not pathetic," Nadia said quietly. "It's human, and it's brave that you came here." Nadia told Sarah a version of the story edited without supernatural elements, about choosing to open the door, about learning to trust again, about discovering that walls don't protect you from pain, they just make you lonely. Sarah listened, tears streaming down her face. "What if I try and it doesn't work?" she whispered. "Then you try again." Nadia squeezed her hand. "But what if you try and it does work? What if opening yourself up leads to something beautiful?" Mrs. Calabresi added, "Life is too short to spend it hiding, dear, even when we're scared, especially when we're scared." By the time Sarah left, she had plans to join Mrs. Calabresi's book club, had Nadia's number, had a reminder that she wasn't as alone as she thought. And Nadia felt something shift, a sense of purpose that went beyond her own healing. She could help others find their way out of the dark. That evening, Nadia and Donato hosted their first dinner party. Just Marco, Mrs. Calabresi, and a few of the Vampire King's trusted associates. Vampires and humans together sharing food and laughter. Nadia had cooked her mother's Russian borscht. Donato had contributed his focaccia. To new beginnings, Marco raised his glass. To opened doors, Mrs. Calabresi added with a wink. To love, the Vampire King said, his eyes finding Nadia's. After everyone left, Nadia and Donato cleaned together, her washing dishes him drying. "I've been thinking," Nadia said, "about what Mrs. Calabresi said, about helping people who are alone." She turned to face him. "I want to start something, maybe a support group, for people dealing with loneliness, grief, isolation." "Tell me more." "I have this platform now, your protection, your resources, and I have experience. I know what it's like to be so lonely, you forget how to not be lonely." Her voice strengthened. "What if we could reach people before they spend 5 years hiding? What if we could show them that opening the door is possible?" Pride shone in Donato's eyes. "I think that's brilliant, and I think you'd be incredible at it. You'd help, always." He pulled her close. "This is your legacy, Nadia. Your way of paying forward what you've learned." She rested her head against his chest. "I never thought I'd find purpose again after my parents died." "Grief doesn't take purpose. It transforms it." He kissed her head. "You're proof of that." Later that night, Nadia found herself back at the window. The same window where she'd stood on New Year's Eve alone with her cold, hot chocolate and her carefully constructed walls. but everything was different now. Behind her, Donato read in his favorite chair. Marco was in the guest room. Mrs. Calabresi's warmth lingered in the air. Nadia wasn't alone anymore. More than that, she didn't want to be. She thought about Sarah taking her first brave steps toward connection. About Alex ready to meet the person who'd brought his sister back to life. About the community she wanted to build. And she thought about that midnight knock, the moment everything changed. "What are you thinking about?" Donato asked. Nadia turned to him. "I'm thinking about doors." "Doors?" "How we spend so much time building them, locking them, hiding behind them." She crossed to him, taking his hands. "And how the bravest thing we can do is open them, even when we're terrified." Donato pulled her into his lap, and she curled against him. "You opened your door," he murmured. "We both did." And in that moment, surrounded by warmth and love and the life she'd built from the ashes of her loneliness, Nadia finally understood. Safety wasn't the opposite of risk. Isolation wasn't the same as protection. And living truly living meant choosing connection even when it terrified you. Meant opening doors at midnight. Meant loving people who might leave, might hurt you, might die. Because the alternative wasn't safety. It was just a slower kind of death. She'd spent 5 years existing, convinced she was protecting herself. But she'd only been hiding from the one thing that made life worth living. Love. "Thank you," she whispered, "for knocking. Thank you for opening the door." Outside, the city sparkled with a million lights, each one a window into someone's life. Someone's loneliness. Someone's hope. And Nadia knew that somewhere out there someone else was sitting alone tonight, building walls, choosing safety over risk. She couldn't reach all of them, but she could reach some. And maybe her story would give them the courage to open their own doors, to take their own risks, to choose life over mere existence. That was the legacy she wanted to leave. Not just healing herself, but helping others heal too. One open door at a time. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to open the door.